Awesome. So I think today is a bit, it's kind of challenging when you're editing for portraiture, which is exactly what we're doing today. And Tasia has been kind enough to let me use an image of her that we took yesterday for it. I'm just going to show you a couple of the images I went home last night and I played with a few. I'm just going to get them up here and show you what they look like. We kind of wanted to go, could one of my guys shut the door? Thanks. We talked about starting with black and white just because it was a really great way to see value. So looking for the lights and darks. That being said, I processed a few that I'm just like, oh, the color is just so nice that I couldn't actually change it. So I'm just getting to the site here and I'll show you the ones I posted if you haven't seen them. We got some good shots. Funny, I have no boy shots, so apparently I need to shoot some boys today. So I processed a few. I made them all kind of black and white. I took some of people taking pictures. Really cool light. We went down into the cafeteria and had some phenomenal light last night. I like this picture of Kaylee a lot. I think it turned out really good. I like the light from the windows. Lovely picture of Cody. Tasia. Cody, you look like a 1970s like rock star in that picture. It could have been like an album cover from like the 70s. It's awesome. Lovely picture of Kia. And that's my final image. So the image that I have in front of me, I'm going to show you the difference between, so this is what I ended up with for Tasia, but this is where I'm going to start. So it's kind of awesome. She's a pretty girl. I have a lot to work with. But I wanted to show you when you're doing sort of professional imaging for printing, how you would edit that just so when you get a printed image, you see what you want to see and you don't see what you want to see. It's very hard when you're doing up close, even with someone who has as nice of skin as this, to not see like pores and the finest of eyebrow hairs and things like, and it sounds like, I know sometimes we edit too much that it doesn't look natural, but we just want to fix it for printing, because when you enlarge stuff, you see all of the ugly details that you may not want to see. And we're going to end up in black and white, but I do my color edits first, and then I process to black and white, because the final process, even if you did black and white first, you lose some of the tonal values that you'll see in color. And I usually, if I'm working for like a client, I'll process in color, I'll save that, and then I'll just convert to black and white and then save another file, because especially when I'm doing weddings, brides want both. They want color and they want black and white because they usually make a vignette. So the first thing I generally do is a bit of a skin fix. And when I say fix, I just mean I want to polish it a bit. So you'll be working pretty heavily in Nik today. I always go to filter, Nik, color effects. And I'm going to show you the blur tool after too, but I like some of the stuff that it does in Nik for skin, especially when you blow it up, because you lose like the detail you don't want. No, you have perfect skin. If I did this, it would take a lot longer to take a picture of me. Your skin is much nicer than mine. But everybody has pores, right? Do you know what I mean? Like you get an up close shot, especially of like someone's like T-zone area, and you're like, oh, it's unflattering. Even if I'm talking to you face to face, it might not be because you don't see it, but it's that like enlarged detail. So first thing I go is Glamour Glow. If I crank this all up, it's kind of a cool, more artsy shot, but then I lose the natural kind of feel. So I usually put it not too far, never more than like a third, because I don't want it to look super artificial, but I just want to give it a bit of a polish. Sometimes I make the glow warmth a little warmer or cooler depending. Here I'd probably go warm, but it's not going to matter in the end that much because we're going to do black and white. The other piece that I do for the skin is the dynamic skin softener. Where'd you go? Right there. Which does sort of a brush effect, which blends blemishes, wrinkles, stuff. It's great. It still keeps the character of the face, but it gives you a little bit of fix for when you're printing. I don't ever really put anything more than like a third up, because I think then you start to lose detail and you get into the part where it looks really like edited and you don't really look like a human anymore. So I do this in stages because I process things like the eyes differently, than the face differently, than the hair differently. So I do it in a series of stages. So those are my two skin tools, and then I'm going to go brush. I'm not going to go all, because I don't want to lose the crystal clear clarity of her eyes, but I do want to blur her face. And I also don't want to lose the clarity of her hair. It's just going to load here. So I always brush tool it when I'm doing portraits. Come on, computer. Okay, so now I can make my brush this big. The only thing you make sure you want to do is you want to put it on a little bit of the fuzzier. If you put it on the hard edges, you're going to get, it's just going to look really choppy when you're editing. I probably would make this a little bit bigger because I don't have to go extreme detail here, and I'm blurring my edges. Make sure that your brush is on normal. Opacity, I usually go 100% unless it looks super fake. Now you might not see all the differences, but you will really see it when you blow it up. Just sort of a little more blurred, and I'm not gonna get her eyes. I'm gonna get everything, and I'm probably not gonna get her lips either. I'm usually just gonna do everywhere around that. And I would do here. Really nice for hands and stuff too, because sometimes hands look a little bit wrinkled and they pick up texture in a really unflattering way. So once I've painted the skin, I'm gonna click apply. And it's gonna apply, maybe, okay. And then the next thing I'm gonna do is I always wanna merge my layers in between, because the problem is if I do another layer, it's just gonna recognize the last thing I've done. So I'm gonna flatten my image, and now I'm gonna do the eyes. And the eyes I do a little bit differently. I do the eyes usually in Viveza. So when I look at the eyes, now when I'm making these changes, it's gonna change her whole face and it's not gonna look pretty right away, but remember that I'm painting it into a specific part and not just there. So just look at how it's changing the eyes. If I go cranked out, all of a sudden she looks like 90, right? And we don't like that. But I'm just doing the eyes. I wouldn't go much higher than like 40. I'm also gonna make the saturation a little bit higher because I like those eyes to stand out a bit. And I also usually paint the irises a little bit whiter, not the black part of the eye, but the colored part of the eye. So I'm usually gonna go brightness just up a little bit, and then I'm gonna brush. Again, I'm not doing an apply all because I don't want the rest of her face to look like that. And you probably don't either. She's like, no, I don't like my face like that. Okay, now here I'm gonna need to like super zoom in. So I'm gonna Control plus. We're getting like really up close and personal with your face. See, look at how perfect your skin looks, and that's without any effort. Okay, so I'm just gonna look by the eyes. You're gonna make this smaller. I'm just gonna paint it around the black part and before I hit the edge, just to get a little more clarity in just the color. And it's a very slight difference, but once you're printing, it makes a big difference. And I'll show you, I'll probably do this twice after I see what it looks like. So I'm just painting right here. And then I'm gonna zoom out and see what I look like. Can you see a slight difference? But it's not nuts, right? But it enhances it just a little bit. Then I apply. The other thing I do is, I would do this if she was smiling and her mouth was open too. I would brighten the teeth and the eyes just a tiny bit. So that I would do in Viveza. And I'm doing this as a screencast and I'll post it up. So if you wanted to like watch the steps again because you missed something, that's okay. I'm gonna crank it up. If I crank it up too much, it's gonna look really weird. But I might put it even to like 10%, brush again. And I'm just gonna brush the white part of her eyes, because really when people buy a portrait, that's what they want. They want a really cool shot of the eyes. And that's where they're gonna wanna focus. So I'm gonna zoom in again and I'm just gonna paint too much. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sort of evaluate if that's too bright. So I'm gonna go minus. I think that's a little too bright. You like it? Okay, let's run with it then. Because I already have the finished version, so we'll play. If it was a little too bright, I would take my opacity down to maybe 60 or 70. But she's happy with it, so I'm gonna run with it. You just want the eyes to really stand out. They're generally the focal part of the image. And if she had teeth, I'd do the same way. Then I'm gonna Control out. Now the thing that I do the opposite to like the hair than I do to the face, because I want the hair to have a little bit more structure and a little bit more sort of contrast. So again, I'm probably gonna merge my layers, flatten image. And now I'm gonna go to color effects. I kind of play between color effects and Viveza when I'm doing faces, but it's kind of like a 5 or 6 step process that I do for everything. Okay, for this I don't need more glamour glow, but now I'm just looking at the hair. So the changes that I'm making, I'm not doing to the rest of her face, just her hair. So I'm probably gonna do a little bit of a detail extractor just to make your hair stick out a bit, not a whole bunch. And I'm probably gonna give it a little bit of brightness, a little bit of warmth just to bring out the color in her hair a little bit more. And maybe a tiny bit of saturation. And again, I'm gonna brush that in. Doing a lot, so it's taking a while to process. Yeah, because I don't think I saved another one, so I'll send you the colored one when we're done. I think so.
Did you get my email?
I don't think so. Was there actually an email?
I emailed you.
I'll have to look.
Nobody.
Holy, it's processing a long time. My computer's a bit slow. Sorry, folks on the other end. Come on, computer. Okay, so now I'm just painting in her hair, and all of a sudden my brush tool went away. I don't know where it went. There it is. So I'm gonna make changes because the hair, nobody really cares if their hair has texture. They really care if their skin has texture. So if you can see, the changes aren't dramatic, but all of a sudden they're a bit warmer. It's a little bit richer, but I don't want to do that to her skin because if you like oversaturate the skin, all of a sudden you look orange and you look like you've tanned like way too much. Now, if I wanted to play, which I actually did on Tages, which I've done especially with like little kid shots because they don't smile, you can sort of make them smile, which is super cool. It is super weird. It's kind of creepy. It makes you question everything you've seen. I did. Okay, well, look at this one and look at that one. So I just moved up your mouth just a tiny bit. It is creepy, right? So you go to filter, you go to liquefy. Now I'm going to show you what happens if you liquefy too much. I pull her face, and we don't want to do that. So I'm going to cancel that, and I'm just going to do a little brush. I would make my brush size probably smaller. Brush pressure is probably, oh, that's not smaller. That's way too big. That's too big. Because I just want a little detail in her mouth. I don't want to like distort her whole face. And then I'm just going to take it a little bit up at a time. And slight changes, can you see the difference on one side? And I mean, it's not a bad portrait to begin with, but if I was doing a little kid, you get really tired of doing a bunch of little kid shots that they're like, have the super grumpy face and their parents want them smiling. So if you make slight changes, and if I don't like that, I would go. So I've done sort of my basic color edit. The other thing I do all the time, I'm just gonna merge again, or I don't have to. The other thing I do is if it's too dark, especially if I'm doing weddings or something, I like the reflector because it's kind of like you've held like a legit reflector in someone and get kind of a bounce off. I process most of my wedding photos with a bit of a reflector, which is on the bottom here. Gold is going to give you kind of a sort of a yellow hue. Soft gold's going to look just weird, but I generally do like a little bit of a silver, and I bring it down just to sort of even out. Kind of it gives me a bit of a bounce flash. So that's what, it keeps going back to that one. I feel like that's probably enough for my color edit. And then I just want to show you how I convert it to black and white because I use silver effects for it because I think it's awesome. And you'll see the difference in them. Okay, again, merge your layers between if you're doing a whole lot. I would go to Nik, I would go to silver effects. So this is a kind of industry standard black and white software. Okay, and I just put I click on the first one and then I just use my arrow tab and look at some of the difference. So that's neutral, underexposed, overexposed, high contrast, a little scary. Those are all a bit scary. But it wanders through, well, it's because when you structure things out, they find like every single fault in your face. But it gives you a lot of options, but within it, she's like, go on, move it on. Within it, I can change the brightness, contrast, structure, and the tonality within it, but it gives me some starter ones. Yeah, that's quite pretty. I also like that one. She doesn't like that one. Now, but if you're doing like a super like sports thing, you might structure it out so the athletes look all tough. And if you put some more glamour glow on it, the structure is a bit reduced. So you've got a whole bunch of options within it. I kind of like that one. But circle through from super artistic to a very minimal edit. Okay, Tasia, say stop when you see the one you want. This one? Okay, we're going to run with this one. But I'm going to show you some changes. Right now it's really cool. But if you wanted to, I could put a bit of a filter on it to change it, but she likes it, so I'm going to run with it. I'm not going to click. Oh, yeah, you're fussy? Go down.